Good morning, world. If you are tuning into this episode of Wheelbite, you know it is Thursday and the week is almost over. And we welcome you to episode 4 of season 3. This week we've got another super special guest, my homie, my coworker, and my hero, Mr. Todd Swalla. For those of you who don't know, Todd was the drummer for the Necros, the Laughing Hyenas, sat in with the Misfits at one point, and was a major part of the Midwest hardcore scene in the early 80s. And if you know anything about the Midwest hardcore scene, you know it was super intertwined with skateboarding culture. So we wanted to have him come on the show and talk about that classic link culturally between punk rock and skateboarding. They've kind of always gone hand in hand in terms of an image or an ideology. I mean, we talk about it a lot throughout the episode that it's just fast, aggressive lifestyles, and they're very anti-establishment in their roots and very DIY. We didn't realize it till after the episode, but we neglected to speak on a couple bands today who are truly embodying that link, and that's Turnstile and Trash Talk, who actually opened their own clothing/skate store down in Los Angeles. And they're probably the only bands nowadays who truly do embody that crossing of cultures the way that bands did in the 80s. It used to be such a common thing to see bands either making skateboards or carrying skateboards around and really promoting that lifestyle as part of their musical identity. But now, because skateboarding is so popular, it's just kind of something bands casually do rather than really go forth and preach. That is, of course, with the exception of the two bands I just mentioned. They post a lot of stuff on the internet of them skating, and I mean, Trash Talk is trying to have their shop drop a video in the next year or two. But I don't want to rant about that too much because, I mean, we were mostly focusing on old school punk and hardcore. So without further ado, here it is, Skating and Punk, the Todd Swalla interview.
Welcome to San Francisco.
Don't skate here.
I feel like it's dangling by a fucking strain of bone marrow.
East Coast Powerhouse.
From New York, I stab you in the rest of the floor.
Carter, it is fucking Friday the fucking 10th.
Dude, I'll give you $100 and I'll take out the Denny Hyenas and you slide that 75-foot handrail.
I especially like the flip of the board.
What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Wheel Bite. I am host 1 of 2, Ted Theodore Mater, and with me, as always, is
Jay Green here.
Today we are joined in the studio by my homie, my coworker, and my hero,
Mr. Todd Swalla.
there we go.
Hi, Ted.
Hi, Todd. For those of you who don't know, Todd was the drummer for a seminal punk band known as the Necros. He drummed with the Misfits. He also was the drummer of the Laughing Hyenas. And being from the Midwest hardcore scene, it was very much rooted in skateboarding. So that's why we have him here today. And, of course, he'll get more into that soon, I'm sure. But because today's topic is the intertwining of punk and skateboarding, we're going to say who our favorite skater, punk skater, whatever you want to call
Favorite them. Or most?
Or, okay,
or
yeah.
Both. Or
Sorry.
Who is most punk?
Yeah, I guess we're going to say who is the most punk skater when it comes down to it. I guess not necessarily.
Which is kind of funny to say that out loud. That's...
Yeah, punk skater.
It's punk as fuck.
I mean, ultimately, for me, I guess I would go with like Dwayne Peters or Jay Adams. I mean, Jay Adams was very much in the LA punk scene at one point in his life. There's even that scene in fucking Lords of Dogtown where he winds up at a Black Flag show and
kick out the wall.
Yeah.
Bases Hall. That was it was like one of those riots.
Yeah, he did
Black Flag show turned riot, which was pretty much everyone for about a year.
Exactly. But Dwayne, like, really is that spirit of, like, punk and skating, like, you know, ripping pools, getting piss drunk, having crazy amounts of tattoos, and just being, like Dwayne is kind of scary in the lore of skateboarding.
Totally.
Like, I mean, Cardiel has the story about him spitting blood on him.
Not even that, they'd spit on like Caballero.
Yeah.
Like when he'd come up and do like a grind or something, they'd spit on him.
That's fucking wild.
Brutal.
Right? It was kind of and it was kind of like Santa Cruz versus Powell for a while there. It was like Gold Cup series probably.
Right.
That makes sense then. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, so just a disclaimer for all our hardcore punk listeners out there. You guys are going to have to maybe forgive my ignorance on the topic. But when Ted asked me the question initially, he sent me the outline of, like, who came to mind, most punk skater. I'm, of course, going to give a typical answer, dancing around the subject. But the video Label Kills came to mind, and that was actually one of, if not the first skate videos I had ever seen, which is a Black Label video that came out probably like 2000, maybe around there, maybe a little after. And of course, Mike V came to mind, and Ted reminded me Christian Svitak. And then the other thing that immediately popped into my head, which is more of like just kind of his whole shit, was Andy Roy, with the just like his style and the voice and his just overall attitude towards, like that's just kind of like a hell raising asshole kind of, like, I don't know, he came to mind.
You're up.
Oh, the punkest.
Who embodies that spirit the most for you?
I'm gonna go with Jay Adams or Dwayne also.
All right.
It's probably, maybe I'll go with Jay since you were Dwayne.
Yeah, I mean, I feel both of them kind of are what initially linked those two lifestyles together. Because, I mean, their obsession with punk and their status as professional skateboarders goes back to the late 70s, you know.
Or even Jay, even earlier, probably late 60s. I think when he started, he was probably 5.
Really?
Something like that. Yeah,
wow.
Started surfing and skating, so.
But I mean, unless he was like rocking Stooges records, which I don't know, maybe he was.
Yeah, hard. I mean, everybody was into heavy music. So, right before punk.
Well, I mean, fast music and skating have always gone hand in hand. I mean, I feel like they kind of have to. They embody the same ideologies, which is like fucking get broke off, go really fast, you know, blood and speed. That's what it all comes down to, I guess.
I'm going to backtrack just a second and shout out Jake Phelps also.
Oh, God, of course. How could we forget such a thing?
I met Jake in Boston. He was probably 13.
Yeah.
So, like 14 maybe. Part of the SSD crew.
I was about to say, was this during the SSD days?
Gallery East in Boston. So, they had a ramp set up outside in the parking lot of it was just an art gallery. Okay. They were having shows, so they put a ramp like up against a wall, like a piece of wood against a wall.
Oh my God,
that's awesome!
Right?
That's so cutty.
Just doing burts on it and stuff. So.
And years later, you realized you had met child Jake Phelps in that parking lot.
When did I get reacquainted with? It was like 10 years ago. One of the first. It was like right when I moved here. At the Skater of the Year award show.
Yeah,
Jake was there. I think I went up to him. I was like, "You remember me?" He's like, "Kinda."
I mean, he does have an
classic.
ironclad
Yeah.
memory, so.
Yeah.
Then I think I saw him again at Portero Hill, like the grand opening.
Yeah.
Of the,
His home.
yeah.
So let's get into you for a hot minute,
Sure.
Todd. The question I love to ask any skater who's a musician or any musician who's really into skating, which came first for you? Was it music or skateboarding?
Music or skateboarding?
Yeah, which
Not
came...
fun. Well, my mom was a music teacher, so we were, mandatory piano lessons at 3rd grade, right? So probably music, I guess. Even though I remember skateboards being around as early as like 69, 70, just a piece of wood with some roller skate wheels on the bottom, basically. So.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, they were kind of more of a novelty, I guess, at that point.
right,
They weren't quite like...
Kinda.
It wasn't a lifestyle yet.
No.
Not yet, right?
So then when did you start skating initially?
Like, seriously?
Yeah,
As
like...
in, well, I mean, we had those early boards, probably 73, 74. I was 10 or 11.
Okay.
Got a plastic Huffy.
Is that something
Yes.
that looks like what we call a penny board
Yes,
now?
it does. Totally.
Okay.
Totally. Identical almost,
Yeah.
except with loose ball bearings,
Yeah.
Oh, God.
which is fun.
Vicious carves on those
After that,
things.
I got a, maybe about 75, I got a Gordon and Smith Fiberflex with Bennett trucks and OJs. So that was my first real good, like a good skateboard, like a professional, like quality. I think we had to order it. Some of the stuff we ordered from the magazine.
Oh,
You
wow.
could only get it in California. There weren't any skateboard shops in Ohio.
Right.
So, right. And then
That's...
eventually there were, but
And there wasn't no internet. You could just go online and get a board.
CCS.
some of the bike shops started dabbling in like having skateboards and stuff.
Right.
Here and there.
Well, even here in San Francisco, I
Right,
know that was
right.
I mean, like, FTC was a ski and snowboard shop in the
And tennis.
80s. And
I think,
tennis.
I think even Skates on Hate was a bicycle shop initially.
Right.
Jesus.
So
So then, all right, I'll talk a little bit, too, about your band and how skateboarding kind of tied into what you guys were doing back then.
well, we started our band coming back from the skateboard park in my mom's car. Right? It's like 77 probably. Now, clearly, like, nobody knew how to play any instruments. So basically, it was just the idea of the band we came up with.
That's awesome.
Was the Necros the name you came up with in your mom's
yeah,
car?
that was one of them. And then
Was Mom present?
Yeah, sure. Circle Jerks was another name we were throwing
Yes.
around. This was long before we were into being like just funny and shocking.
Circle
right?
Jerks
I
is
mean,
an
come on.
amazing punk name.
Yeah.
Punk band name.
We settled on the Necros, which was pretty. It's pretty gross, kind of shocking. Parents would hate it.
Yeah. Totally.
It's kind of the. Yeah, I doubt my mom was listening or paying attention. Probably.
Maybe a little cleaner
Right.
than the Circle Jerks, though.
Circle
But
Jerks
not
is
by
pretty-
much.
Not my
Yeah, it's
much.
both pretty.
What age was that?
14.
14, okay.
Probably 13.
So you were, and was this endless summer that you guys were skating at
No,
this
no.
point?
Soaring High in Toledo, which was incidentally the first indoor skate park in the country.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Cool.
So they even have removable walls for the summer. So
That's
punk had kind of just happened on the news. The Sex Pistols were pretty much on the evening news like every day for like 6 months until Sid Vicious died, pretty much, and then punk died with him. At least the public thought. So
but yeah.
it was around. Yeah, I cut out a picture of Sid like from Time magazine and put it on the bottom of my board, like with Scotch tape or something, right? Like, yeah.
So those early days too, when like you guys were starting out, like, what was more important to you guys, like playing in a punk band or skating, or were they like so intertwined?
Like I
Hang
said,
on.
the band, we didn't even try to play for like a year after we came up with the concept of having a band, right? Because nobody knew how to play.
Right.
So things started kind of happening. Like we got kicked out of the skate park. That was pretty punk because we had our crew, and then there was like the crew of the skate park team, which we'd already all been fired from working at the skate park, right?
And this is when you could get a job at a skate park.
Yeah, we all got jobs initially there, like as safety monitors. You didn't get paid, but you got free skate time.
We call those pad nannies.
Exactly. Right. And no, you didn't want to sit there and watch people. You wanted to skate.
Right.
So I think that's how everybody got fired, because we were like skating on the job probably or something.
Yeah, I used to work at a trampoline park, and that was their rule, like, don't jump while you're working.
Nope.
So at this time, was there any known, how we kind of, I guess our generation, when we were coming into skateboarding, was there any known association between the two, or was it just like skaters were more likely to listen to punk at the time, and people who were into punk were kind of likely to be skaters also, or was it just kind of really early and the two were kind of still separate?
Skateboarder magazine started like reviewing punk records.
Okay.
And then photos of like, Steve Olson or Tony Alva looking punk started popping up in the magazine, stuff like that, and they kept reviewing. So that kind of, I think that kind of, I don't know, that kind of started the marriage of punk and skateboarding.
Yeah, that makes some sense.
Magazine, right?
And what year was that?
77, 78.
Okay, late 70s.
Right when it was happening.
Okay.
I mean, that whole New York Ramones thing had already happened, and I think everybody kind of ignored it, but then the Sex Pistols was all over the news, so it really kind of started, And then what was the big Devo on Saturday Night Live? That was a big thing that happened. And obviously, Devo is intertwined with skateboarding.
So, I mean, I guess for you guys, there was never like a critical point where it's like, oh, we're a punk band who skates, or we're skaters who are in a punk band. Like the way you're describing it, coming from Skateboarder magazine, like. It just kind of
just pushed on us.
Yeah,
totally.
Like it just sort of happened.
I mean, we were already into heavy music. To us, there wasn't any difference between, say, the first Van Halen album and the first Ramones album and the new Black Sabbath album, right? It was all it was just heavy rock.
We'll get into it a little later down the subject, but there seems to be this natural progression of like, even that sounds like that's very early in skateboard history, and to like see someone that you know about already in a magazine, but like portraying this lifestyle that like isn't focused on skateboarding.
Well, right.
That like it takes off completely, because like it's happened with other stuff in skateboarding too, specifically like rap and hip hop way later down the timeline. But I'm sure that was like the lift-off point.
It's kind of a big deal. Tony Alva cut all his hair off, right, and went punk.
Right, and I mean all those dudes in the
Steve Olson, like in the parking lot, with his finger in his nose, stuff like that.
Well, I was gonna say like Alva and like Peralta and all those dudes, like they all had long hair, like when they first. Yeah, exactly. That was the look of surfing, skating, Southern California.
Which was just as degenerate and frowned upon as when they went punk.
Right.
Right.
But I think the punk thing was even like worse.
Right. Oh yeah.
Like, culturally, it was seen as way more shocking. Long hair and stuff was just like a product of the entire 70s. But punk was such a radical shift. I mean, I always love that scene in the Freaks and Geeks where they're sitting around the breakfast table and the dad says like, have you read about these Sex Pistols? They spit on their audience, and it's just so he can't even fathom it because he's just such a conservative.
It's like, why would you want to do that? It just seems odd to me. Right.
So did the Necros get any coverage then in Skateboarder or any skate related thing that point?
After we got going, I mean, we got some early Thrasher coverage and stuff like that.
And you guys also shot some stuff too with legendary skate and punk photographer Glenn Friedman.
Yeah.
Did he?
One of those, probably the second tour, I think.
Okay.
Actually, out west.
Did he shoot just music photos of you guys, or did you guys go skating with him?
There's skate photos too. So I've talked to him. He can't find them. The negatives are somewhere in his mom's attic or something.
I mean, that's the thing about being a photographer. The content just sort of piles up on itself, and next thing you know, you're like forgetting about stuff.
There's a nice shot that he took of me doing a layback at the Banks in in Santa Monica at Kenner.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which is pretty cool. Right.
How was that getting like being in Thrasher?
Oh, it was awesome. Right. It's like that was like the mag then.
Yeah.
Because Action Now is Skateboarder Action Now is dead already, and then Thrasher kind of popped up. I think I initially did I wrote like a Midwest kind of skate article for Thrasher. And of course, name dropped my band.
Well, you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, isn't that the point?
And all the other bands in our little Detroit kind of Michigan-centric scene.
Well, this is perfect segue because, I mean, I read the book you lent me a while back, and anyone listening, if you have any interest in the Midwest, Detroit, Ohio hardcore music, there's this great book called Why Be Something You're Not. Such a easy and good read, and you learn so much about just that whole culture and that life, that era. It's awesome. But one of the things I never knew was that so much of your scene came out of the Endless Summer skate park. So I didn't realize that wasn't the one you hung out at in the beginning. But yeah, just talk about Endless Summer a bit and how that kind of helped shape the scene.
Endless Summer was up in the North Detroit suburbs, like Roseville, which is it's like 15 miles from downtown, so you're up in the burbs. Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think initially Chris Yandel, remember him? No.
I don't remember.
He was a 70s slalom guy.
Okay.
They brought him in to design it, and he moved to Michigan, and they had all this big deal. And I think he had a hand in our skate park too, Soaring High in Toledo. But yeah, I mean, they had a pool, right? And then later they got a Wally Holiday kidney.
Oh, that's tight.
Which was a big deal, right? So that was just kind of like, the punk thing just kind of happened, and kids. It was kind of like a war between Endless Summer and the other park in Detroit was Skateboard USA, and those kids were all straight. kind of not
squares,
just not punk, right? They did not go for the punk thing.
Well, the name was something to be,
And Endless Summer started being punks who didn't skate hung out there.
Yeah, it was just the spot.
It was the place to go, because it's like Michigan. It's fucking boring as fuck, right? It's like.
Well, I think there's always something to be said about that within skating, about something bringing all sorts of miscreants to one location. Like, even here in San Francisco with like EMB and stuff, there was graffiti artists and hip hop artists and skaters and like all sorts of weirdos just hanging out in one location. It was just like a breeding ground of culture.
Skate parks in general are just like, attract every and all fuckery for sure.
Oh yeah.
Whether you're a skater or not.
Yeah, that's kind of where I don't know, when I moved to Livermore, that's where I went to get some weed. The day I moved there, so there you go.
Oh, there's a skate park here? Bet someone there has weed.
It seems like ancient history now when it was illegal.
That is facts, though. That's like, you're guaranteed to score for sure.
I hooked up in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, though, the flip side of that is that so many parks now are built in like school zones. So like...
Yeah, it's kind of the concentration camp theory, or next to the police department.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
It's like we can kind of we can keep our eyes on everybody
in a community center.
Yeah, I think they had a camera at this park at Livermore, and the kids climbed the pole and tore it down. Right? It's like I'm like yes, and it's right behind the police station anyway, so it's like whatever.
But yeah, so Endless Summer though that was clearly the place to be at that point. Well,
with the Necros we did our record release party there. Played in the freestyle area, in the banked area. So, with, a couple other bands opening and stuff, so.
So now that your band has some traction, and it's, publicly known that you skate, were, you linking up with skaters, too, that you were, super stoked on to even, be running into? And then the flip side of that, too, is, other bands were skating, too. I know Minor Threat was all skaters and stuff as well. So what was... I mean, at this point, all the culture is meshing together. What were some, gnarly things that kind of happened because of that?
Oh, well, Friedman, Glenn, hooked us up with, Alva and Adams and David Hackett and Jay Smith. So, I mean, Tony Alva, took us to Paul Revere High School or junior high, like where they invented bank riding, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Like following his lines. It's like
Wow.
that was like just pretty awe-inspiring.
My friend went to that
Right.
school, actually.
Hanging out with Jay Adams, skating some like shitty half pipe in Santa Monica. Like, and he
Yeah,
doesn't.
that's
And he doesn't have a
gotta be a
board.
trip.
He doesn't have a board, so he borrows mine. Right? It's like
No way. That's amazing.
I think I had like a McGill with like trackers and mini cubics or something. So
Oh, yeah, I should probably ask that too. Like at this point too, the Bones Brigade and stuff is like starting to blow up, and like I know like early on, Cab was rocking Misfits gear and stuff like that. Like, what was that like with like? Because the Bones Brigade were larger than life to some extent. You know, they were like super celebrities, and they're rocking bands that like you hang out with on a regular basis.
Were they like, oh, look at those posers?
I think I think we played like Corey O'Brien's birthday party in San Jose with the Faction opening, like in a driveway, right? So there's like, yeah.
It's funny
I
to
mean,
think of playing in a driveway with Cab.
Oh, there's a photo of me with like the dude from Rancid sitting in the kick drum. Like he's like 10.
Who? Tim Armstrong?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah,
Wow.
because the kick drum was moving, and then but everybody else is behind me, like Cab, the O'Briens, like Roscop, etc. Like all those dudes. So,
That's fucking wild.
and I remember Roscop was going to early. He went to Necro shows early on before he moved to California, because they lived in Dayton.
Okay.
And Marty Geminis and Rob used to come up to shows actually.
Well, again,
So
you're making a perfect segue for me right here.
awesome.
Because yeah, it's almost like you read the outline that I sent you.
Oh my God! Really?
It's wild. So yeah, it gets to a point too, like the Necros break up, and eventually you're doing the Laughing Hyenas, but also in the late '80s, like I felt, Dayton, Ohio is actually starting to pull some decent talent with like the development of Alien Workshop, and I know my personal favorite stories that you've told me. Skating Dan Sturt's ramp, like.
Well, Dan was a good friend of mine.
Right. Well,
Dan was up in Toledo.
Okay, so
Right.
But basically what I'm trying to get at is like what was kind of the catalyst for all of a sudden all this stuff in skateboarding is happening in the Midwest?
In Ohio? I don't know, man. I mean, what, Neil Blinder, didn't he move to Dayton at some point?
Well, yeah, he
Like,
moved
right?
there to
And then
start
started
Alien Workshop, yeah.
With like Mike Hill and some other people, and then there was like Surf Ohio. They had these like big, like, there was this arena in Dayton where they had these big demos, but there'd be thousands of kids showing up to these skate demos, like they had at this arena. So, and then we were from Toledo, so we were more kind of Michigan oriented because we're right on the border. But I mean, I went to a lot of those things in Dayton and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was just weird. It's like, why is Neil Blender moving to Ohio? Like,
Yeah.
everybody was like kind of dumbfounded.
While everyone
Right.
was moving to California
Right,
at the time.
exactly.
Yeah,
Right?
that's funny.
I mean, yeah, I know that like Alien Workshop going to Dayton, it's so funny because like it clearly was the right move for them, but at the time I know it was seen as like bizarre because
Right.
what kind of skate scene is in fucking Dayton, Ohio?
There was. I mean,
And I mean too, you were traveling the country at this point too. Like, what other than California, like, were you seeing skating like on the ground floor in so many other places?
oh,
like,
everywhere at some point, like by 81, 82. It was definitely intertwined with punk.
Like I said in the beginning, like blood, speed, aggression. Like
Punk
it's
skateboarders in Manhattan, right? Like outside
Yeah.
of CBGBs and stuff
Right.
like that. Like Dan Sturt, I think I met at a Flipper Necro show in Ann Arbor. Actually, he was doing these bizarre like twisting, contorting stage dives. I remember just taking people out, like big time.
it sounds like his MO.
Yeah,
He was
exactly.
all into
Oh,
taking
yeah.
people out, especially like threatening them with a bow and arrow to land their shit,
Yeah,
or he was going to take them out.
or diving off of a 7-story like hotel balcony on acid into a pool. Right?
So now we're at a point too, though.
He's the craziest person I've ever met. Totally. Like
Which one?
Dan Sturt, for real. Like totally. I mean, maybe not so crazy now, but definitely, like, he was literally just off his rocker. Like,
I mean, all the best artists
yes,
typically are, aren't they?
Exactly, right?
Like he is seen widely as like one of the 2 or 3 best skate photographers of all time.
Yeah, definitely.
He's in your top 3 for sure.
He's
right?
my number 1. But between like Grant Britton, Glenn,
Friedman, and
Sturt, like, and then beyond that, maybe like Spike Jones and like Bryce Knights. Like, if you want to take the list a little further,
some of the Warren Bolster original skateboard photography is pretty awesome.
Yeah, I forgot Stesic too. I shouldn't leave him out the
yeah.
list either. He was pretty influential in the beginning.
So another Jim Goodrich was a good one. Some of that stuff was. All those guys were pretty. I mean, they were professional photographers, right? All working for Surfer.
So at this point, though, too, now that like in history, like, you know, we're in the early 90s now in terms of most of the stuff we're talking about. And now at this point, skateboarding videos are starting to have like massive punk soundtracks. Like, I know Hensley was skating to Operation Ivy at this point. Carol is skating to like Beastie Boys punk songs. People are skating to Bad Brains. Like, what do you have to say about that shift where now, like, I mean, we talked about like Cab rocking Misfits gear
right
in the Bones Brigade era, but, you know, at this point the Misfits were relevant when he's doing that. Now we're at a point where like all these bands don't exist anymore, and they are seen as like the standard of what you put in a skate video. Like, can you give your take on that shift at all? I feel like a lot of the music was more generic to an extent, but now it's like people are like going out of their way to choose this Misfits song or this Bad Brains song or this Fugazi song. Like, what was that cultural shift like from your eyes in terms of like these are the people you've been making music with for the last 10 some odd plus years?
It almost seems like anything else when that happens in skateboarding, like it would ruin it for some people.
The punk thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it probably did for a large segment, right?
I mean, I'm sure they were bummed. Some of them were bummed on it, but at the same time, some of them were like
some of those mellow people in San Diego, right?
Right. But some of them had to be stoked, like.
Yeah, well, I mean, but then look how it got during the whole. I mean, you got that Gator like MTV thing, like Jesus, like right? It was just like the whole. I don't know, people wearing pastels.
Right.
Right. That whole, like, I kind of rejected that whole thing.
Right.
Right. The whole
going into the Savannah Slam.
Yeah. Right. Like, what are you like? You're dressing like that? Okay. Some of those haircuts that were coiffed.
Well, like fucking Tony Hawk with the McSqueeb. Yeah.
We're talking about the Birdman.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. I just think it's crazy that like 1 minute all of these bands are like. It's like handoff cassettes that you're getting from friends, or like you're looking at minimally circulated zines that are being like, oh, order this Adolescence record by mail, but you're sending check directly to like some suburban teenager's house to get the record. But now all of a sudden all of these songs that were just like passed around among peers, now they're in skate videos that are being seen on a nationwide, if not worldwide scale. Like, Plan B was pushing a lot of those songs. I mean, even in the Blind video, they had a Dinosaur Jr. song, and all these bands were so on the low before, and now all of a sudden they're in a media platform that, while skate videos at this point still were underground, they're being seen by a ton of people who might not have heard that music otherwise had they not seen this video.
Yeah.
So that's like the shift I'm referring to. Like that's why I was wondering if you
where it started getting popular.
Where like I didn't know if you were affected by that, or people around you were, or what.
I mean, not really. It just kind of seemed some of these bands were getting more popular than others because they're getting exposure.
I mean, I feel like that's how skating has always been culturally too. Like, things just kind of happen, and and no one's like, oh, this is like important, or this is like a moment like in history that we're gonna think about or be talking about. Like it just happens as it goes, and that's all there is to it. No one's really dwelling on it in any big shape or form.
Right.
Yeah.
Going in that transition, was there any time you found yourself looking at others as like you're seeing, dudes who may not look the part or live the part in videos using these songs, where you find yourself at any moment like, well, like fuck that, like that kid's soft, like that kid's not really into it, like kind of like
he's a poser.
Right, poser, totally, like throwing it back.
Yeah,
a
not
little
really.
bit.
I mean, I probably wasn't paying that much attention.
Okay.
Like to what was going on with that at that moment.
Well, by then you're wrapped up in the Laughing Hyenas.
Oh, that was about 91. So yeah, at some point the vert ramps were gone, so I wasn't really skating that much anymore because I can't even ollie.
Yeah.
So,
that was the death of vert, and comes street skateboarding.
First everybody chopped their vert ramps to mini ramps,
right?
Initially, but then even after a while, those were gone.
You can thank Plan B for that.
People even took the mini ramps apart and used them for launch ramps.
Yeah.
Like where they'd cart around in a pickup truck, go to a parking lot and skate a launch ramp, right? Like.
Yeah. Well, even before Plan B, like World Industries put out that video, Rubbish Heap, and that was like 100% street skating in a time where like that wasn't even really a thing yet. Yeah. Like, you'd see some street stuff in like those Bones Brigade videos, like maybe Tommy Guerrero bombing a hill.
Right.
Oh shit, I should have brought that up before too. Like didn't you play with free beer back in the day?
Yeah, down on Broadway, actually, which isn't there anymore, I don't think. It's just down the street.
Yeah, what was the club called again?
The On Broadway. Just on Broadway. It's right across the street from Big Al's.
Yeah, and that's where like the Dead Kennedys used to play.
The Mabuhay was downstairs, like next door.
All right.
So I played both the Mabuhay and the Stone across the street.
Yeah, that's a different neighborhood now for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, first time when we played the Mabuhay, it was like, they're like, yeah, don't wander too far away by yourself, because you'll probably get jumped. So
now both in music culture at this point too, and in skating culture, punk is no longer seen as like the ultimate form of rebellion. Like by the early 90s, you've got like Green Day getting played on the radio, Nirvana being on the radio, and shit like that. But at the same time, now it's all about hip hop. Hip hop's the real counterculture, the real voice of rebellion.
The underground rock scene is pretty happening in the early 90s, I think. So.
Yeah, I wouldn't say hip-hop necessarily like dominated or took over at that point. You were just seeing it kind of creep in a little bit. I still feel like there was, I don't know, like a heavier association with punk at that time with skateboarding.
Well, I think it was like mid-90s, like 94... maybe 95, like, you have like Kareem Campbell skating to like Wu-Tang. Yeah, they're all like, everyone's skating to Gangstar and
but as far as like associating a lifestyle heavily, I still think it's completely different now, and we'll get there, but like I still think at that time it was turning maybe.
Well, and I mean that's what I wanted to start getting into though, is like, this is the turn now. Like, this is the point where punk and skating, while they're still intertwined, hip hop is slowly coming in and starting to like phase it out and shift that whole lifestyle a bit.
Hip hop was kind of the new punk, right?
Well, that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Yeah,
rebellion music. So it was probably a natural thing for skaters to.
You know what I think about is the kid who, and I don't think this, maybe nowadays, I don't think this ever happened at this time, is I think of a kid who is heavy into punk rock, and just because of that gets a skateboard. Starts carrying a skateboard with him, starts riding down the street, and I don't think you can say that necessarily for rap music. Just because you're heavy into rap, you're not really right. Yeah, I'm not. Yeah, it doesn't translate necessarily. So I always thought that about like just kids being into that lifestyle as a whole, that like picking up a skateboard and almost having it as an accessory, for lack of a better term, was like always made more sense with like the punk lifestyle. And it's different now because skateboarding is integrated into everything.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's what I think about when we were getting ready for this episode. Like, honestly, even up through like when I was in high school, like that still, like I used to see kids who I could tell they had no real interest in skateboarding, but were carrying a board with them, would skate with us anyways, but it was more to like play to the punk thing.
Yeah.
You're totally right. That's something I didn't even think of, and especially when I read interviews from skaters who are from more of like an urban environment in that sense, like they were all looked at as fucking weirdos for like being in the Bronx or something, and like they're the only black kid in the neighborhood with a skateboard, and everyone like doesn't understand what they're getting at whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, yeah, you're right. I guess among like suburban punk lifestyle, it was more of an accessory, I guess, which is such a weird thing to consider. But you're right. You're totally right.
But like even in San Francisco here, like going through middle school and high school, like it was so obvious that like they had just gotten a skateboard because it fit into that image in the punk
thing.
Yeah,
right.
But by the time you and myself are like that age, like we're talking like this is like late 90s, early 2000s now, hip hop and skateboarding were way more integrated at that point.
Yeah,
sure.
Once it was the baggy pants, you know, skating the hieroglyphics era, it was over. Punk was no longer going to be the genre of music that necessarily reeled a ton of skaters in, and then like the rebirth of that comes with like the fucking Warped Tour.
It was still very regional too, though, I think. So like, I mean, like it seemed more natural for me to gravitate towards hip hop because I'm from San Francisco and we're into graffiti, you know, and like the street culture of like, you know, so
I guess it also depends too what brands you're into as well, because
very true.
Probably.
Very
well, like
true.
Growing up, I was super into Zero. Zero was like
that's a
punk,
really good point,
metal,
actually.
like fast music. So like we were all about all that shit. We loved Danzig, we loved Iron Maiden, we loved the Misfits. It wasn't until like a little later we started seeing videos with hip hop, and even those videos were like, you know, sometimes you'd get some classic shit like someone skating to fucking Wu-Tang or I'm trying to think of I think I just keep thinking of Wu-Tang and Gangstar because I think of like Steve Olson skating to fucking Above the Clouds.
The other Steve Olson.
Yeah, yes. We should specify the other Steve Olson, not old school punk rock Steve Olson, but curly haired, eating shrooms.
Yeah,
Steve
major
Olson.
psychedelics, Steve Olson.
But
that's a really, really good point. Actually, that is, you hit the nail on the head with the brand thing.
Well, like Shorties came out, and we were all about
maybe it was
fulfill
the
the dream.
companies that kind of like made the shift.
I
right?
think
With
that's
the videos.
yeah,
right?
that's a really good point, because now companies now are so fluid with who they market to, that like it's so obvious that was like a thing back then. So like Zero, Black Label, maybe America, or like things like that were like definitely marketed and geared towards a punk crowd, and we don't see that so much anymore with anything anyway.
Well, I mean, obviously some companies are still marketing like that. Like DGK isn't going for the punk crowd.
Sure, correct.
And same with like
Correct.
Zero ain't going for the hip hop crowd.
Yeah, but they've I don't know, I feel like they've I don't want to say mellowed out, but like I feel like they've kind of become more of like a full circle brand.
I guess, I mean, yeah.
Than they used to be.
Jamie Thomas skating the fucking No Limit stuff is like pretty. I guess that's a good point.
And Foundation and Toy Machine and companies like that might still be kind of pushing the line a little bit.
Yeah, but then meanwhile, like, Girl was back in the day very much a hip hop oriented company.
Sure.
You wouldn't hear like fucking Misfits songs or Fugazi songs in a Girl chocolate video.
You brought up DGK, that's hilarious.
Oh, I mean, they're the most hip hop tied in entity within skating at this point, and like Shorty's was back in the day. I mean, even Element back in the early 90s, their first video was very much all about like, we're only gonna have hip hop.
Yeah.
We're only gonna be promoting like graffiti style graphics and urban culture. They were called Underworld Element at first. People often forget that. They weren't even Element, and now Element is such a like, their last video had Bad Brains, Op, Ivy, but then it also had like Tortoise and like weird indie rock and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think it's just, it's cliche, but history repeats itself. And that's why, like, that was such a visual for me, hearing about you talk about, like, seeing Steve Olson in a magazine, like, really, like, identifying with the culture and the subculture. And that was, like, totally something I went through, like, being a kid from San Francisco years later with, like hip-hop, like, seeing these skaters in a magazine and being like, oh, wow, like, they're super into this. Yeah, they're totally portraying this lifestyle. I was like, I think it's infatuation kind of it's the same difference more or less.
Right.
But with
the subculture.
Yeah. But the question I wanted to essentially end on here today and like something to discuss is like, is skateboarding still considered punk? Like, are the two mutually exclusive? Like, is punk even real anymore? Is like a whole other thing I could get into, but
yeah, I don't know. The Damned are playing Oracle Arena, so
yeah,
right.
And the Misfits,
and
like,
the Misfits.
And it's like what, $120 a ticket or some shit. That's the least punk thing I've ever heard in my damn life.
Right. So I don't know. I mean,
but are those two lifestyles mutually exclusive? Like, I think when we were growing up, they were both heavily marketed towards us. Like, I brought up the Warped Tour a minute ago, and it was like, yeah, go see a bunch of punk bands, but also go see like Stevie Cab and Jeff Rowley and Christian Hosoi shred a ramp.
Right.
But I just think that those two worlds now, it's just more excuses for marketing at this point above anything. Like, unfortunately, I don't think skating is punk, and I don't think punk and skating are like tied together.
Yeah, they figured out how to sell a lot of both a while ago, didn't they? All right.
Mm-hmm. I mean, who do we blame here? Like, we ate that shit up,
right? Exactly.
Like across multiple generations, clearly, because like, I mean, you're like a good 20 years older than both of us are, and
25.
we both multiple generations bought into this shit. So, no question.
Right? I gotta agree with you. That's a hard no for me. I don't think that I don't see the kids gravitating and flocking to that, at least like as far as like the lifestyle and the clothes and the music and like how heavily associated it was with skateboarding. Like I said, like a kid could be into punk rock and would just get a skateboard. Like, I don't see that at all anymore.
No, not
even a little bit. And I think that's long gone, actually.
I think there will always be like some faction of people who get into it, like, and they're into both things. You'll always go to a skate park and see like one kid with a fucking studded belt and some spiky hair.
There'll always be,
like there'll always be one.
Are you Corey Duffel?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, are we not going to talk about Corey Duffel here?
I think he's like one of the last strongholds of like that whole thing, dude.
Would you consider him ever like to be legit? Like, is he
a punk rocker?
Yeah,
sure. Why not?
In one of his
Walnut
phases.
Creek, right?
Putting Walnut Creek on the map, man. You ever run into him out there in the East?
I think I did, like, not lately, but like when we moved here. There's that kind of jive park in Walnut Creek. That's kind of fun, actually, but it's still.
I'm actually proud and glad that no one brought him up because,
Oh man!
you know, no, nothing like that. But
At least it was at the end.
You'd ask a lot of people like that question for the intro, like who's the punkest skater, and by eyes, yeah, right, by the image, and no salt or him. By the image, a lot of people would say him probably.
Sure.
Yeah, especially younger kids nowadays. But even though like he's changed up his whole look too, man.
Yeah,
He's got like a bowl cut and like.
Did he? He went for kind of a.
Yeah, he's got a bowl cut and he like rocks Converse and he's like always wearing this like. Anytime I feel like I see him, he's wearing this like same white and black striped shirt like.
Oh, that's right.
I almost feel like he's like.
That's his signature.
His signature to me has always been the Freddy Krueger era.
Right.
Oh, that's
He's
right.
like,
That sweater.
Yeah, he rocks the Krueger sweater and was like doing fucking frontside salad grinds and shit. Like, I just think of that clip in the beginning of Free Your Mind. He like does like doesn't he do like a front salad on a handrail and then he like does the kick off the fence like. And that's like ultimate Freddy Krueger, Corey Duffel era.
So if there's anything you're gonna take away from this episode, it's that Corey Duffel is.
He's the last
kinda punk.
The last punk rock skateboarder.
Yeah, because like I'm trying to think of anyone like
Corey Duffel got a pass from
Who's
Todd.
the other dude though? Jim Greco. He was pretty. Cool.
Oh man, how did we not bring up Greco too? Because him and Ali Boulala were like really into perpetuating
and that was
shit.
like the height of like skateboarding marketing it to like that.
Like Baker very much was like, all right, we got a thing going here. Like these dudes wear leather and they got the spiky hair. Like let's fucking run with
piss trunks.
They even skate in their boots.
The piss trunks.
Right?
Yeah. They were very much the same era, and like again bringing up the Warped Tour. Like the Warped Tour was very much the like polished like. This is the punk you hear on the radio, but meanwhile, you had the piss drunks who were like, nah, we only listen to fucking punk bands that are 30 years old and did tons of fucking heroin when they were around. There was the flip side of both worlds of punk at the height of like all that shit going on where it was being massively marketed towards us.
Kind of the gutter punk skateboarding thing.
But what I'm trying to say is I can't think of anyone nowadays who's like embodying that. Like maybe...
Is the kid from Supreme?
Yes, sir.
Which kid?
The, Ben.
Oh, yeah. Ben...
Ben Cadeau.
Yeah, that's his last name. But even only kind of. Like, he skated to the Smashing Pumpkins in his last part. That's not punk. That's like really. That's like an indie move. Like, oh, that guy's so indie.
90s alternative.
Yeah.
But like when I think of like, I'm trying to think of like skaters nowadays who could be like real punk in that sense. Like the closest thing I think that comes to mind is like Colin Provost, and he's not even really punk. He's like more metal. Yeah. He loves like Stone Cold Steve Austin, and like he's very much in that sector of people. It's way more hip hop oriented now. I mean, every now and then too, you'll get like, there was some Nike video that came out where I think it was Tommy Sandoval or Justin Brock. Tommy Sandoval on Nike?
No.
So then it had to have been Justin Brock, but he skated to fucking Minor Threat in a Nike video, and I thought that was fucking mind-blowing. Like, there's no way that Ian would have gone for that fucking 20, 30 years. I'm surprised he even went for it now. Like,
well, like all the rules are thrown out the window now.
I think the Necros popped up on some Thrasher online thing
recently,
a couple years ago, last year maybe.
I want to know who skated.
Like they used the song.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still, the music is still used, but in terms of like a skater embodying that whole idea, it's just not something you really see anymore. And if there are like you know, we're having trouble just coming up with the dude on Supreme, fucking Ben Cadeau, like if there are other people, they're so far and few between at this point, because skating's just too friendly and polished. Like it's it's just not about that life anymore. You know, the gutter is not cool.
What was the Joe Jackson song? He made skateboarding respectable. Remember, I'm the man. There's some line about making skateboarding respectable. Right. Yeah. This is like in, I don't know, when did that come out? 78?
Oh, wow.
Probably. So.
Predicting the future,
Yep,
I guess.
basically. So. Did you see the 1260?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It was pretty insane.
I mean,
It's like-
that's where we're at now,
Yeah,
man.
seriously.
People fucking breaking world records on national television,
wow.
on ESPN,
On a 30-foot ramp.
sponsored by like massive fucking energy drink companies. And
He was
shit
pretty
like
stoked, though.
Yeah, safe to say it lost its punk edge.
Just a bit.
But I mean, yeah, punk has lost its punk edge. So what the fuck are you even gonna do?